Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and without saying a single word, the atmosphere shifts? It's not about their looks or their status. It's something deeper, something rare. Carl Jung believed that a true empath carries an aura, an invisible force that cannot be faked, bought, or imitated, and yet very few people in this world ever possess it. But why? Why do empaths hold this strange power, even when they themselves often feel drained, broken, or misunderstood? Why do people simultaneously admire them and yet take advantage of them? That is the paradox of the empath.
Let's ask the question Jung himself would ask: what makes the aura of an empath so rare and so unsettling to those around them? Because the truth is, most people are blind to the deeper layers of life. They live on the surface. They crave entertainment, distraction, control. But the empath pierces through that. Jung called this gift intuition, a psychic function that cuts through masks, lies, and illusions. An empath doesn't just see the world as it is, they feel it in their bones. And when you feel life that deeply, you radiate an aura that others cannot ignore.
Now, Jung taught that the goal of life is individuation, the integration of all that we are, both light and shadow. Most people avoid this. They suppress their pain, deny their shadow, and live as fragments of themselves. But empaths, they can't escape it. They feel the shadow of the world pressing in on them. They sense the wounds of others, even when those wounds are hidden behind smiles and small talk. And this is where their aura comes from. Because to carry that much awareness means you carry weight. And weight, whether you realize it or not, creates gravity. That gravity pulls people in. Some are drawn to it because it feels like truth. Others are terrified of it because it exposes their lies. Jung would say that empaths are wounded healers. Their aura is not just light, it is a mixture of scars, silence, and survival. Think about it. When someone has walked through fire and still carries kindness, there is a power there that no book, no diploma, no money can replicate. Empaths often don't realize it, but their very presence tells a story. I have suffered, I have seen darkness, and yet I have chosen not to become it. This is magnetic, not because it's glamorous, but because it's real. In a world full of masks, the aura of the empath says, "This is me." Broken maybe, but honest, hurting maybe, but awake, and that authenticity hits people harder than they expect.
Here is the unsettling truth.
Society does not thrive on authenticity. It thrives on conformity. It needs people to play roles, follow scripts, and obey orders. But the empath, they carry an aura that silently says, "I see you." They can see when authority is lying. They can sense when leaders are corrupt. They can feel when systems are dehumanizing. That's why so many empaths feel like outsiders. They weren't built to fit in. They were built to stand out even when it costs them. So the rare aura of the empath is not some mystical accident. It is the natural consequence of carrying both pain and love in the same heart. It is the energy of someone who refuses to be numb, who chooses to feel, even when feeling hurts. And that is why the empath aura is rare, because most people choose the easier path. But the empath cannot. They were born to see. They were born to feel. They were born to carry the weight of the shadow, and in doing so, they shine a light that the world desperately needs. Jung often wrote about archetypes, patterns of human energy that live within all of us. And empaths embody a very specific archetype, the wounded healer. This archetype is powerful because it holds the ability to transform pain into wisdom. But it's also dangerous because it makes the empath a magnet for chaos. Think about it. When someone radiates safety, the broken, the lost, the manipulative, they all come running. Some come to be healed. Others come to feed. That's why empaths often ask themselves, why do I always attract toxic people? It's not an accident. It's their aura. The same gravity that pulls in those seeking comfort also attracts those who want to drain. Jung's concept of projection explains this perfectly. Most people cannot handle the truth of who they are, so they project their disowned parts onto others. Who do they choose for this projection? The empath. Because the empath's aura is like a mirror. It reflects people back to themselves, And here's the paradox: when people see kindness, they may project love. When they see openness, they may project need. But when they see their own shadow reflected, they project hate. That's why empaths often experience sudden betrayals, random hostility, or relationships that turn sour. It's not because they did something wrong, it's because their aura exposed something others weren't ready to face. Empaths rarely talk about it, but they live with a constant weight, the burden of other people's pain. Imagine walking into a room and not just hearing words, but feeling the exhaustion behind them. Not just seeing smiles, but sensing the sadness hiding beneath. That's the empath's reality. They are tuned to a frequency most people ignore. But here's the tragedy. Because they feel so much, they often forget to protect themselves. They give until there's nothing left. They help until they are empty. And then they wonder why they feel so drained, so invisible, so used. Jung would call this the danger of inflation, when someone merges too much with others' emotions and loses their own boundaries. And this is where the empath's aura becomes both luminous and fragile. Now here's where it gets darker. Most people believe empathy is pure light, but Jung would disagree. Every light casts a shadow. For the empath, the shadow is this: they are tempted to define themselves through the pain of others, to feel needed, to feel important, to feel like their worth comes from healing what is broken. And when that happens, they are no longer free. They are trapped, chained to the wounds of those around them. That's why so many empaths struggle with toxic cycles, saving, fixing, forgiving, only to be hurt again, because deep down they believe their pain is the price of their power. Here's the unsettling truth. Empaths destabilize society without even trying. When systems are built on deception, exploitation, and manipulation, the empath's aura is like a silent rebellion. It says, "I see through you," and that terrifies people in power. This is why history shows us a pattern. Those who carried deep empathy often became outcasts, rebels, or even martyrs. They didn't fit the machinery of society because their presence exposed its cracks, and yet those same societies secretly depended on them. Because without empaths, there is no conscience. Without empaths, there is no reminder of humanity. So the rare aura of the empath is not simply beautiful, it is disruptive. It unsettles, it heals, and it wounds. It is the silent presence that makes liars uncomfortable, manipulators restless, and the broken feel seen. But here's the question we now face: if the empath's aura is both a gift and a curse, how can they carry it without being destroyed by it? That is where Jung's deepest insight comes in. Carl Jung often warned, the more you are connected outwardly, the more you must return inwardly. For empaths, this isn't optional. It's survival. Because when you feel everyone else's energy, you risk forgetting your own. You risk becoming a mirror with no face, a healer with no center. That is why Jung insisted on individuation, the process of reclaiming your whole self. For the empath, individuation means learning to say, "Yes, I feel your pain, but it is not mine to carry. Yes, I see your shadow, but I will not let it swallow me." Withdrawal is not weakness, it is protection. It is the shield that allows the empath's aura to remain rare, without being consumed. One of Jung's most overlooked insights is this: silence is not emptiness. Silence is power. When an empath withdraws into silence, their aura does something extraordinary. It grows sharper, more defined, more magnetic. Why? Because silence is resistance in a world that thrives on noise. When everyone is desperate to be seen, the one who refuses to perform becomes the most mysterious. And mystery is power. This is why people can stop thinking about empaths who disappear. Why their absence echoes louder than other people's presence. Because silence carries an aura of sovereignty, and sovereignty is the rarest energy of all. Here's the turning point. The empath's aura is not meant to remain a raw wound. It is meant to evolve into wisdom. The difference is subtle, but life-changing. A wounded empath says, "I must heal everyone." A wise empath says, "I choose who is worthy of my energy." This shift is what Jung would call integration, no longer drowning in others' shadows, but walking beside them unafraid. And when this integration happens, the aura of the empath transforms. It is no longer fragile, no longer draining. It becomes radiant, unshakable, a force that heals without sacrificing itself. Now imagine if more empaths made this shift. If instead of being used, they stood in their sovereignty. If instead of pouring out endlessly, they learned to channel wisely, society would change, because empaths would no longer be easy prey for manipulators. They would no longer be silent martyrs holding up broken systems. They would be quiet rebels carrying an aura that whispers, "You cannot deceive me. You cannot control me. I see through it all." And that is the most dangerous kind of power, not the power that shouts, but the power that knows. So what is the rare aura only true empaths carry? It is not softness, it is not weakness, it is not even kindness. It is the living presence of a soul that has walked through darkness and chosen to remain awake. It is the silent gravity of someone who sees both the beauty and the horror of the world and still dares to love. And that is why empaths are rare. Because most people numb themselves, most people obey, most people hide from the shadow, but the empath, they cannot hide, they cannot forget. They carry the truth of humanity in their very being, and that truth radiates. It unsettles, it heals, it burns. That is the aura. That is the weight. That is the gift. So if you are an empath, remember this. Your aura is rare because it was forged in fire. Protect it, guard it, and above all, never let the world convince you to dim it. Because in a time of deception, the empath's light is not just rare, it is revolutionary.